Welcome to Beyond Bylines, a podcast of the Bristol Herald Courier. Beyond Bylines is presented by Food City. Nobody does food like Food City. Hello, I'm Kevin Mays with the Bristol Herald Courier, and our special guest with us today on Beyond Bylines is Abingdon coach Jimmy Brown. Coach, thanks for being with us, first of all.
I appreciate you having me.
And talking to you just a few weeks after one of the highlights of your career, of course, winning the Class 3 state championship. But in girls basketball. But before we get into talking about the championship itself, let's learn, for folks who are watching, learn a little bit about yourself for folks who don't know. I mean, how did you get started in the world of coaching?
Well, I think a lot of people, I always thought that I would be able to play basketball, forever.
Right.
When you're 10 years old in the driveway, you just assume I'm going to go pro at this.
Be in the NBA
I'm the best that's ever lived at this game. So, I went to Patrick Henry High School, and when I graduated, I went to Emory and Henry, and like a lot of kids, I think I still didn't know that I wasn't very good, and I just assumed I was going to go to Emory and play more than I did at Patrick Henry.
Right.
Right. I joke with people and tell them I played for Emory for about 3 days, because that's about how long it took me to realize, like, man, these guys are a lot better than I am. And just a chance encounter with a friend of mine, Chad Pennington, who graduated a couple years before me at Patrick Henry. Just walking to class one day, he said, "I'm the head 8th grade coach at Glade Middle. And my assistant that helped me last year isn't going to be able to do it this year. Would you like to help?" And I was like, well, I could stay at Emory and be a student assistant and probably do a lot of laundry and not get paid, or I could help. I could help Coach Pennington and make a little money. So
Right.
I was like, yeah, I'm in. And I helped him for a year, and then he stepped away. And I kind of got that position by default.
Wow.
And
Okay.
was a head middle school coach for a while, and just kind of worked my way up. And I've always coached in Washington County, but that's kind of where I started.
Right. So, and you touched on a couple of things there. I mean, sports is one of those things. I know you've been around in a long time, so have I, but it's one of those things that, as the saying goes, it sort of gets in your blood. And I mean, I know once you're in sports and you have that love for sports itself, and particular basketball or whatever the sport may be, I mean, it's something that you want to continue doing, even if you're not that good at it, like I'm not, and I guess that's why I got into writing. But yeah, so but it is one of those things that sort of gets in your blood, and it's almost a way of life.
Oh, I mean, for sure. I mean, my students now make fun of me. They talk about I light up, and I'm a little different during March Madness, or things like that. And I've had the opportunity to go to some Final Fours, go to some NBA games, and things like that. And I mean, it's something that I think, just even when you're not coaching it, you can fall in love with it, and just, it kind of is home away from home almost. It's an enjoyable experience no matter what.
And talk about that connection, I guess, that I know that coaches have with other coaches and with their players as well. I know those are two different kind of connections there, but if you want to start with coaches, first of all, I know it's almost a club kind of group kind of thing there. I mean,
it's for me, as I was coming up, as I was coaching middle school and JV and things like that, that part of it kind of amazed me, but that's one of those things you don't really realize as a player. But especially once I got to John Battle, and I was an assistant coach at John Battle on the girls' side, we would go to the state tournament, and you get to see all these people that you're competing against, and that you don't know really well, and you're sitting with them for a couple hours and sharing stories, and I mean that part of it was just so much more enjoyable than I ever thought it would be. And then when I became a head coach, to me that part of it, it really kind of keeps you going,
Right.
because seasons are tough, and sometimes you feel like you're going to be really good and you're not. Sometimes you're not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to talk to some of the same coaches year in, year out, away from the floor, coaching clinics, events, things like that. It, Even when you don't feel like maybe you've done a good job or that you're doing a good job, just to share some stories and talk to some of those people, it kind of reinsures you, like, okay, I think I can do this.
Right. Were there, when you were a young coach, just coming into it, I mean, were there mentors that you looked up to, or that sort of advised you along the way?
Yeah. John K. Wood was, he was my JV coach at Patrick Henry.
Right.
And, my senior year, I played for Randy Poole. He had come over from Castlewood. So Coach Poole and Coach K. Wood both kind of, I mean, if not for them, I would have never got that middle school position, because, they were the high school coaches at the time. They helped me a ton.
Right.
When I came to battle, Coach Perigin was the girls' coach, and him and Ike Anderson were the girls' coaches at the high school, and I mean they helped me out a ton, And when I got my first job at Holston, Don Blackburn was the AD. Jason Matlock was there, and those guys helped me out a lot as well. So there's always people in the building, or that were really close to me, that were there to just be a sounding board, or to run ideas through, or anything like that.
How did you end up arriving at Abingdon and taking the girls' head coaching position? How did that? Maybe some of the history of that.
Yeah, it was actually really tough. I mean, it's kind of weird the way your career in anything goes, but
right.
I always assumed I'd be a boys coach. And when I got my teaching position at Wallace Middle School, they said, well, you can have middle school girls is open, and if you'd like the position, then you can have it. And I was like, well, I don't know that I want that position. I don't know that I want that position.
So you had only coached boys up until that time.
Yeah, and it was like, well, this is what we got, take it or leave it. So I took it, and but I always knew I wanted to be a head coach. So the first opportunity I got was at Holston, and I'd been there for 2 years, and the Abingdon job came open, and my position was kind of odd. I was teaching at Abingdon and John Battle, so I was traveling during the day, and I wasn't in the building at Holston.
Mm-hmm.
And really small school at Holston, they had the same math teachers for probably 15 years. It's like, I don't know that I'll ever be in this building, or at least it's going to take a while. So I was like, well, at least I'm there part of the time, so maybe this would be worth going for. And I actually give my friend a hard time. The day it posted, I called him and I said, talk me out of this. talk me out of putting in for this position. And he actually talked me into putting in for the position. And, I mean, you never know, are you going to get the position?
Right.
But it worked out perfectly. I got the basketball position, and then I was actually put at Abingdon all day, so I didn't have to travel anymore. Awesome. So it was, it was perfect.
Right. And that was how long ago was it?
I think this was my 15th season.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's been a little bit.
So you've been at it a while, and so the mentorship, that you've developed with players. And I know there's players that stick out or come back and say, hey, what do you think about this? I mean, the thing that I've learned in sports and doing it so much and covering it and observing, I guess, from the inside or from the outside in, is that you see that special connection with teachers and coaches that students have. And I know, personally speaking, I mean, it's affected me for my whole life, and I'm sure there's others out there too. I mean, talk about that kind of.
Yeah, that amazes me. I think all the time. I think that you don't realize as a teacher or a coach how much effect you have on other people.
Right.
Because you're just doing a job.
Right.
I mean, you're just coming to work and trying to do the best you can. And but especially big events, state championship. I've had so many people reach out to me that, I've just assumed had forgot about me.
Right.
I've had people that were on, those girls teams at John Battle that I was a part of. I've had a couple of young men that, I coached on those 8th grade teams at Glade Middle School.
Right.
Who've reached out and congratulated me. And, you kind of take those connections for granted until you run into somebody at Food City, right, that you haven't seen in a while, and you just strike up a conversation like you've lived down the street from each other for 20 years or something. And that part of it is just it's awesome.
That is. Tony, I know you said 15 years or so. So before we get to the good stuff, let's talk about some of the. I know there's been tough years, years where you didn't do as well as you had hoped to or maybe expected to. I mean, and you mentioned some. That's when those mentors come in handy and colleagues that you can talk to. I mean, just how tough is that living through that? I know in a sports centric place like Washington County in particular, I know folks like to win, obviously, but just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I got my first head coaching position at Holston, I think Tim asked me this question.
Tim Hayes.
And I was like, I was so excited because I was getting the opportunity to be a head basketball coach. But then, once that excitement wore off, it was just nothing but worry. Like, what if I'm not any good at this? What if we lose? What if I get fired and I don't ever get this opportunity again? And we didn't win a game that first year at Holston.
Right.
So it was like,
that's rough.
Am I even going to make it to year 2? And my first year at Abingdon was kind of similar. I think, if I remember correctly, I think we lost 18 in a row.
Mm.
So, I'd had a little bit of success my second year at Holston, and then to come to Abingdon and, start out not being able to win, I was like, well, here we go again. Am I even going to make it to year 2? Am I going to get to be here? Are they going to ship me somewhere else? How's this going to work out? And we were fortunate enough that year. This is probably the craziest year I was ever a coach. We won 2 of our last 4 in the regular season. We won 2 games in the district tournament, limped into the region tournament, and then won 2 games in the region, qualified for state.
Wow.
So our official record that year, we were 2-20, and we ended up playing in state quarterfinals.
Wow.
So it was, it was just it was a crazy year, but it ended well. Which helped a lot, I think, and kind of built some momentum for the coming years.
Let's talk about the good and the bad of the Mountain 7. I guess it's probably one of the most competitive districts for basketball in the state when you look at it across the state and how competitive the teams are from top to bottom. I mean, just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, to me, I mean. I've never been in a conference or a district or anything quite like it. I mean, it is, I mean, obviously the coaching is just extremely high level. There's great athletes year in and year out. And, I think it's really made us at Abingdon, be better, especially girls basketball. I mean, but, it's just every night, that the opposing team's going to be prepared. They're going to know you and what you do. And, there's just no nights off. And I think a lot of us joke about it, when we play, when we see each other. But,
Right.
it's really true. I mean, you've really got to have, really good efforts every night if you're going to win games in the Mount 7.
And of course, in the Mountain 7, everybody is a Class 2 school except for Abingdon, which is a Class 3. And I know you get reminded of that often, but I mean, you guys, you had a good run in the Mountain 7 there, and then you go from that point in the Mountain 7. You go from that point and play in the district tournament. You don't win the district, right? You don't win the district tournament, but then you go on to Region 3D and then in the state as well and win. I mean, it's odd, but I know, and I guess it's hard to explain to folks on the outside, but really playing in that Mountain 7, even though it's a Class 2 district, other than you guys, I mean, it helps prepare you for that Class 3 competition.
Oh, for sure. And it's frustrating, I think, for a lot of coaches at Abingdon, because we kind of live in two worlds.
Right.
We're in the 2A and the Mountain 7 world for a while, and I don't feel like it's appreciated by our region. Like, we kind of get docked in our
Right.
point system for playing these 2A schools. And, that part of it's frustrating, but, like you said, at the end of the day, I know, especially for girls basketball, I mean, we are prepared, whether we win the thing. I think we've won it once since we've been a part of it.
Right.
But whether we win it or we've come in, 3, 4, 5, but you come out of that district and if nothing else, you are battle tested. And, that was the big thing this year. It was like we just kept telling our kids, our district's really good. We've played some really good non-district schools, and whoever is in front of us, from here on out, you're going to be prepared. And we may not win, but you are going to be prepared for, the games that we're going to have to win.
Yeah, and when you get into, the Region 3D tournament, I mean, you feel like you have to earn that extra respect there from the region because they're saying, well, you've played all these Class 2 schools.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, and I know the Mountain 7 coaches are a proud group. I mean, they take great pride in, how many years the Mountain 7 has produced the 2A champ. And, you feel like you owe it to them too. It's like, well, man, they're winning all these games.
Right.
We want to pick that flag up too and kind of carry it and show people that, girls basketball in Southwest Virginia is really, really good.
If you want to pick that piece of hardware up there, I know we had it there, but so that's the ultimate prize, I guess, in high school basketball in Virginia and getting that state championship. Just talk about this season now. We've worked our way up to the good stuff. Let's talk about this season, how it went for you guys from start to finish. I know there were some moments there that you probably had a couple of doubts, or others had a couple of doubts anyway, but just really what a great postseason run that you guys had.
Yeah, it was, coming into this season, I mean, we knew we had big pieces. I mean, obviously, Ainsley Tribbett had a phenomenal career, and it's signed to go to NC State. So, the building block was really good with Ainsley. And Lauren Baker, our point guard, who'd been a 3-year starter, was returning as well. outside of those two, we were dependent on people that had either played varsity and just not had a ton of minutes, or that played JV last year. So in the beginning, I think we thought, well, we could be okay. We're just not sure, how good we're gonna be.
Right.
And then for me, when we beat Union early, it was like, well, okay, maybe we're going to be okay. We're going to be good. And then we came to Doc Maples, and went 0-3 in 3 days.
Right.
So it was like, well, we'll see. But then we came out of Doc Maples, and were able to beat George Wythe and Lord Botetourt back to back on the road. And both of those amazing seasons last year were both really good again this year. And from then on, it was like we kind of knew what we were capable of. Even on nights we maybe didn't show that.
Right.
But this, to me, this squad was really. This is probably the first squad I've ever had that just absolutely peaked at the very best time. I mean, we were playing our best basketball, during that state tournament run. And, as a coach, that's what you want every year.
Right.
But to me, this was really the first team I had where I felt like that was the truth.
And it's a team that I had the privilege of watching this year, a few games. And, I saw you all in defeat, and I saw you all victorious as well. And it seemed like it was the same team. I mean, there was no real panic, seemed like, with your girls out there. I mean, they played their game regardless of what was on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to, we definitely this year tried to stay, I think, very level-headed. We definitely celebrated the wins. I mean, every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But when we did come up short, when we lost, we really tried to go back and say, okay, what can we do better? So I think that's one of those things you say a lot, that, hey, we need to learn from this. Don't let this be for nothing.
Right.
But I think this squad really, they took that to heart. And when we came up short, the next day in practice, it was there was no pouting, there was no heads hanging. It was, okay, let's go out here and get better today, and try to make sure that doesn't happen again.
And I know all coaches like to say, it's a business trip when you go to Richmond in the state finals and those type things. But from across the way, I've watched many teams walk out on the Siegel Center floor there at Virginia Commonwealth for the state championship game. There just has to be a lot of nerves there and things before things get started. Just talk about that a little bit.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I told our kids, when I was an assistant at John Battle, and even when I was a young head coach, we go to those state tournament games, and you sit there. I pulled up a picture, and I'm like, see this U right here, VCU. I used to sit in that U, and watch these games, and you just think like that's where I want to be. I want to be that guy, sitting in that chair down there. So I know I had some nerves, for sure. We tried to do, all the things to calm the kids down. We came up, early and let them we actually watched Galax play the night before.
Right.
And try to make sure they had a good experience out of it. But to me, that's where, our volleyball kids probably helped way more than I did, because, they just won. And I think them having that experience and being able to kind of tell, our young kids who had never done that before, to me, that was probably more helpful than anything I said.
Right. So just talk about, just your overall feelings of this year, if you can, put them in a sentence or two, I guess, just of how great this has been for the high school, the community, just everything.
Yeah, that part of it, it's kind of like the relationships we were talking about earlier. You don't realize, the effect you have, on the people in the community
Right.
until, you're meeting new people. And, we did a parade through town in the snow,
Mm.
and people are out. And, it kind of drives it home, like, people want you to succeed. They want you to do well. And, and then they take pride in the product, in the, all the sports at Abingdon High School. And that part of it was just great. It was, again, it's one of those things you don't really expect. And then when you get to live through all that, it was amazing.
Well, Coach, we want to thank you for being with us today, and always welcome to come back and talk, and enjoy you talking to you, and appreciate all the time that you've given the Bristol Herald Courier over the years. I know you've done quite a few interviews, but really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and man, we appreciate you guys. I've always enjoyed it. Y'all have always been great to me, and anything I can do to help out, just call me anytime.
Appreciate it, Coach. Coach Jimmy Brown with now state champion, Class 3 state champion Abingdon Lady Falcons in girls basketball. You've been listening to Beyond Bylines, a podcast of the Bristol Herald Courier. Beyond Bylines is presented by Food City. Nobody does food like Food City.